Well, good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll assess the economy with our friend and family member. He's my first cousin, EJ Antoni. Did you know that? He's also my first cousin, in addition to being the in-house economist for this great show. And then Bob Anderson will be here at 4 o'clock. Yes, the man who has dethroned the Soros-funded prosecutor in Loudoun County. Bob Anderson. You saw that last-minute push they made. They got close with the votes, but they fell 300 short, and Bob Anderson is the victor. Luke Rosiak will be here at 4:30 from the Daily Wire with some brand-new reporting on how the FBI isn't focused on the right stuff. John Schweppe is here at 5 o'clock today. We talk homeschooling with him. And Steve Friend, an FBI whistleblower, has a reaction at 5:30 to the ongoing corruption of the nation's federal law enforcement agency. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I want to express my gratitude again to Dan Bongino and his great team, Jim and Mike, who helped me over the last 3 hours as I was filling in for him. And my gratitude to you as well, if you were hanging out with me there. It's just wild. And this is one of those days where I each show we do this, I look at Corey and I said, we're not going to get to everything today. I'm telling you right now, we're still not going to get to everything today. 6 hours of radio, it's not going to happen. You may be wondering, when is Joe Biden going to finally be kicked out of office? Or at the very least, impeached by the United States House of Representatives? I've been wondering the same thing. When is that actually going to happen? Well, Jim Jordan, the head of the Judiciary Committee, has an update for us on this subject. He's been laying this out on cable news here in the last 24 hours. Forgive me, I forget what news outlet this was on. It was one of the Fox stations, business or otherwise. But here's Jim Jordan laying out impeachment as it's expected to play out next.
We got a handful of more depositions to do, Stuart. We want to talk to Hunter Biden. We want to talk to James Biden, who did all this business together. And we want to talk to his business partners, Eric Schwerin, Bob Alinsky, Rob Walker. And then, frankly, we just sent a subpoena to this Kevin Morris individual. He's the guy who stepped forward and paid Hunter Biden's like $2.5 million in back taxes he owed, just, I guess, out of the goodness of his heart. So we want to talk to him as well.
Now, let me pause on that for a moment, because that's a really big feature of this story. And there hasn't been a tremendous amount of attention on Kevin Morris. Kevin Morris is the Hollywood attorney who swooped in and has paid off all of Hunter Biden's back debts. So his debts to the IRS, Kevin Morris paid them off. Now, under normal circumstances, that payoff would then subsequently be taxable if he's given millions of dollars to Hunter Biden and then his taxes are paid off. Well, you'd have to pay taxes on the money you just got from Kevin Morris. No, you see, the way it worked was Kevin gave Hunter a loan. It's a loan, they say. And that's a weird trend, isn't it? The amount of times that the Bidens are handling loans when money is flowing. In fact, remember that check that Joe Biden received courtesy of Chinese money flowing into the coffers of the Biden family? And then on the foreline, on the check, it says it was to pay off a loan that Joe Biden had given to to other members of the Biden family. No, there's no promissory note. There's no other evidence that this was actually a loan of any kind, but it says loan on the check. We're paying off a loan. And the reason that is often done, especially in criminal matters, is because you're trying to evade detection by the IRS. It's not taxable if it's a loan because there's an expectation it's being paid back. It's not money that you're making. It's money that you had. You would just pay taxes on the interest, I guess. But they're concealing, it appears, a vast quantity of their finances under this category of loans. So Kevin Morris has been paying off all these bills. Additionally, Kevin Morris was paying for Hunter Biden's private jet travel to and from Washington, D.C., down to see his child and his baby mama in their custody dispute because he had to keep going to these court hearings about the child support payments that he should be paying. And Kevin Morris covered all the bills, covered all the travel. So this guy needs to answer some questions, like what is going on? And lastly, and importantly here in this Kevin Morris saga, remember the Chinese equity, the equity stake that Hunter Biden had in a Chinese company, he kept holding on to as Joe Biden became president of the United States, well into the Biden presidency. And it was only thanks to a couple of dogged reporters, and I think Stephen Nelson in the New York Post was among them. They kept asking, wait a second, why does Hunter Biden still have this? Why does Hunter Biden still have this? Why does Hunter Biden still have this? Isn't this a conflict of interest? I thought you said he was going to divest. And then the various Biden spokeswomen kept on saying, well, you have to talk to Hunter Biden. You have to talk to him. You can't talk to us. It's about him. He's a private citizen, blah, blah, blah. And finally, Hunter did divest. Hunter divested his equity stake in this Chinese company. He's free of it now. Guess who he gave it to? Kevin Morris. Kevin Morris owns the equity stake in the Chinese company that Hunter Biden was holding on to. And yet Kevin Morris is now paying all of Hunter Biden's bills. Make that add up for me. It kind of sounds like they're just laundering the money around. That Hunter Biden's still taking the money from this equity stake. He's just doing it through his sugar brother. That's what they call him, Kevin Morris. So Jim Jordan says, yeah, we want to bring in all these guys. We want to put the finishing touches on some of these depositions. We need to have Biden family members in, and we need to have the sugar brother, Kevin Morris.
Like $2.5 million in back taxes he owed, just, I guess, out of the goodness of his heart. So we want to talk to him as well. But the plan is to do those final depositions and then make a decision on, we're in the impeachment inquiry, do we move forward with actual articles of impeachment? And I think we will present this to the conference, and we'll make a decision as a conference if the facts warrant going to actual articles and moving into full impeachment of the president.
Yeah, I guess the only part of this that assessment that makes me uncomfortable is the end of it. It's like, I don't know why he's holding out judgment on that particular question. Do you not think that he warrants impeachment at this point for any number of violations of the law? High crimes and misdemeanors, bribery. What evidence are you looking for? What more do you need? So if you're the president of the United States and the law says that you're supposed to be enforcing the southern border and you refuse to do that, does that qualify as a high crime and misdemeanor? Does it? If you take the most senseless exit route out of Afghanistan that leads to the death of 13 American troops, does that qualify? What's it going to take? If you're governing the deaths of over 100,000 Americans, and you know actually by drug overdoses, and you know how to stop them, which is to actually secure the border, which you're supposed to do by law, does that not qualify as a high crime and a misdemeanor? We were told during all of these Trump impeachments, this is a political question. It's not even really a criminal one. You don't need a criminal charge. It's a political question. The House can just make a decision. So why don't you? Why don't you? But you can tell by the way Jim Jordan's answering this question that he knows. That would sound like he was talking to Stuart Varney. That he knows that the pressure is on, that this has to come to some sort of meaningful conclusion and quickly. Because people are tired of this, aren't they? Aren't they? I mean, Dan's in Harper's Ferry. He's on line 2. Dan, are you tired of this game?
Yeah, very tired. Thanks for taking my call, Vince. And I think the aggravating part for me is that with all the Biden family criminal, illegal, and or shady activities that have been going on, not just with Biden and Hunter, but the rest of his family.
Jim.
Why are they just now talking about impeaching him? Why didn't they start this from day one, year one, like they did with an innocent man in Trump when he was president? Why are they just now talking about doing something? And that's the aggravating part for me. With all the evidence that they have against him, with all the shady dealings, illegal criminal activities of his son and other people in his family, tit for tat is the very least of the criminal stuff and unethical stuff going on in his family. Why are they not bringing people up on charges since day one that they knew about all this?
Yeah, and as far as, charges, if we're talking criminal, there's only so much you can do. You have a corrupt Justice Department, so they're not going to do anything on this. And then even enforcing subpoenas, hard to do. Contempt of Congress, you're not going to get prosecutions because the whole judicial system is rigged. I mean, the justice system is rigged. So you have a limited power here. And the power you have is impeachment, the power of impeachment. Start the proceeding. Get the votes on the record. Yeah. And with Joe Biden, obviously he merits it. And then I've been saying this for a long time. The guy merits it, clearly. And so does Alejandro Mayorkas. That one, even if you were squeamish about Joe, which I don't know why you would be, Alejandro Mayorkas is the biggest slam dunk you've ever seen. The guy just keeps lying to Congress about the status of our border. Our border's wide open. He's the reason for it. That guy should be launched into the sun. Just impeach him.
And there's so many people in the FBI agency, Wright, Comey, Lynch, Holder, all these people. Why are they not subpoenaing these people? Why are they not bringing these people up before congressional testimony? And so the next attorney general can start pressing charges on the criminal activities of these people.
It's really out of control. And they, by the way, to your point on the next attorney general, they do fear Donald Trump getting reelected. There's no question about that. I was thinking about the analogy for this, in my view, is like they've spent all this time, Dan, attacking Trump, trying to suffocate him. It's like if you ever try and take down a hornet's nest, you ever go outside and you're like, oh, I got to take care of that hornet's nest, and you got hornets in it. You're like, what am I going to do? Well, I hit it with the spray, or I hit it with a broom, or whatever you're going to do to knock this thing down. You want to hit it, and you want to make sure you don't get stung. So it's like a whole process. Only Dad's going to do it. Everyone's hiding in the house. Dad's going to go out and take care of the hornet's nest. You're trying to knock this thing down. And the thing you're worried about is one of them's going to come out and just pop you, maybe more. And you do not want that. And so right now, the way the left views Trump is as a hornet's nest. They just keep kicking it. They're just hitting him over and over. We got to suffocate this thing. We got to knock him down. We got to take him out. And they're scared to death that the end result of this is he's going to come back into power and he's going to sting the ever-living crap out of them. And so right now, the panic you're seeing set in, where I'm looking at magazine stories and newspaper articles, the threat Trump poses, blah, blah, blah. What they're really concerned about is that this time he'll bring together a group of people who don't work against him and instead competently live up to the dictates of the Constitution and actually hold people accountable for their sins. That's what scares them more than anything, Dan.
And if this would have happened hindsight 2020, if these people would have been brought to justice or punished for unethical things they were doing during his first term, we wouldn't have all these problems now.
That's true. And that's why I'm sitting here going, if Trump's going to get another go at this, if he's going to win this thing, and right now he's the leading candidate. That's over every Democrat. That's over every Republican. He's the leading candidate. If he's going to win this thing, may God give him the wisdom to make the right decisions in that office to overcome the problems he encountered the first time, because he's going to have a lot of people out to get him, and he's going to have a competent team around him to confront that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vince.
Dan, thank you for the call, as always. Let's see. Chris is calling in from Thurmont now, line one. Chris, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, how you doing, Vince?
I'm good, Chris.
First of all, I got to say you're the Iron Man of radio for being on for 3 hours and doing another 3. So
it's a total privilege. Thank you, though, Chris. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Second of all, I totally agree with this last person. When I was in the Army, my first general order was to guard my post and quit it when only properly relieved. And that was a general order. That wasn't an oath to the Constitution of the United States that I took when I joined the military. And that was, to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it seems like nowadays politicians, they just do not uphold that oath.
No, the oath is to themselves. It's the same fundamental narcissism you see in young people on TikTok talking about how great Osama bin Laden is. It all comes from the kind of same place. It's it's self-interest. And it's breaking the whole country down, isn't it? It's not living up to the oath. The oath that you took is to something greater than yourself. It's an oath of service. It's an oath of love. It's an oath of loyalty to country. And we're not getting a lot of any of that right now, are we?
No, and it's the same. I took an oath before my country and my God, almost the same that I did when I married my wife. I took an oath to God and my family that we would love and honor and cherish each other until death do us part.
Yeah.
And that is gone now, it seems. And it's just kind of disheartening. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chris. All right. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it and appreciate your service. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's see here. I've got Dan calling in from Frederick now, line 2. Dan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hi, Vince. Great job. I'm filling in for the other Dan.
Thank you.
So I was wondering if the attorney generals of, say, Florida or Texas, Ashley Moody or Ken Paxton, could file their own do their own indictments on Mayorkas and whoever, as far as conspiracy or human trafficking, drug trafficking. If the states could do it themselves and just leave the feds out of it, because Merrick Garland's not going to do it. Congress is not going to do it. Let 20 states go after him. Let them defend themselves in at least 2, if not 20 different states.
Yeah. Yeah, if we can find an actual, like a specific statute that they violated, God, that would be great. That would be great.
I'm sure Florida has some statutes against human trafficking and drug trafficking, and maybe even conspiracy or RICO laws as well.
Yeah, you would hope so, right? So they can go after these guys. I mean, this is out of my league. The answers to this question, I imagine the supremacy clause comes into play here to some extent. But I will say that some of these attorneys general, to include Ken Paxton, have argued that the Constitution does include a provision that allows a state to turn back an invasion, and that Texas should do that. Right now, Texas is contemplating, they're about to pass a law. Greg Abbott is on the verge of signing it, a law that will allow them to handle illegal immigration in the state. So they'll be able to do deportations right back into Mexico on their own. That's according to this new law that just passed both houses in their state legislature.
After that goes through the Supreme Court again.
Yes, because there was a case.
Arizona's already been through that.
There was a case, U.S. v. Arizona, which really bigfooted the states in terms of their ability to handle all of this. But, declaring an invasion and saying, hey, look, the Constitution gives us this chance to be able to protect our state. Smart idea. I know Ken Cuccinelli was out there advocating for it, but one way or the other, it's got to be done. Something's got to be done here, Dan, huh?
Quickly, one more thing.
Yeah.
If they'd have started impeaching Joe Biden from day one, if nothing else, it would have kept the Senate from confirming all these federal judges.
True. That's such a good point. Yes. If you get the impeachment through, you lock up Senate business immediately, and that's of great value to the country. Dan, thank you for that. Let me see.
Right,
Philip is calling. Philip is calling in from Great Falls. Philip, real quick, sir, go ahead.
Vince,
on line one.
You're getting close to something.
Yes, sir. I'm heading towards the break.
You're not really getting close to something, but you're not on it. And that is the fact that we all are frustrated by the impeachment process. And one wonders, understanding the process they're going through, if they really want to do this or not. Because the implication is really.
Mm-hmm. Philip, thank you. I brought you in a tight moment on the show, but you're right. What is the underlying motivation? Why is it playing out like this? And I've floated before. It could be the Republicans just want Biden to be the nominee, seeing him as the weakest possible candidate to run against. Maybe that's the case, but I got to say, there's a lot of frustration out there as our country is under assault every day, and something's got to be done. All right, hold tight. Coming up, I've got EJ Antoni to describe the assault that the Biden administration is conducting on the economy. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:30 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Some breaking news coming up for you in just a moment. Also coming up on the show, Bob Anderson will be here. Just won in Loudoun County, unseated the Soros-funded prosecutor there. Great success. Great success. He's coming in at 4 o'clock. 4:30, Luke Rosiak will be with us with the Daily Wire as the FBI remains distracted by political operations and is letting the American public down on some really important investigations. Luke's got the details. John Schweppe will talk homeschooling with us. And then at 5:30, Steve Friend, FBI whistleblower, joins us here back on the program to talk about the latest FBI headlines. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. House Speaker Mike Johnson just posting a few minutes ago to Twitter, now X, formerly Twitter. Today I am keeping my promise to the American people and making all of the January 6th tapes available to all Americans. So this is some news from the speaker. Matt Gaetz has been out in public in the last hour or so telling people that the tapes are coming, that Mike Johnson is going to be broadly releasing them to the public. It sounds like there will be some mechanism by which all of us will be able to go through the footage and get an eye on everything that went down on January 6th and what they are and are not telling us. So that's Speaker Mike Johnson fulfilling that promise to get things out. I think that was a promise McCarthy made, but he's fulfilling it. Speaker Johnson is. So that's the breaking news right now. Also, I want to talk about the economy with you. Biden this week is saying the economy is in great shape, but the problem is the American people. They just have no idea how good it is.
I acknowledge there's a disconnect between the numbers and how people feel about their place in the world right now. We can deal with the second part as well. We still have work to do.
Yeah. So the White House has a plan to put you in a chokehold until you love the economy. Meanwhile, Fox reports that Americans view the economy very negatively.
The numbers tell a different story, according to a new Fox poll, which says 78% of voters view the economy negatively, and 67% say the worst isn't over yet. President Biden's rating on handling inflation and higher prices is underwater by 40 points. The new survey reveals Republicans are seen as better able to handle top voter concerns, such as inflation and safety-related issues like crime, national security, and terrorism, while Democrats receive higher marks on lower-ranking problems, climate change, abortion, and transgender issues.
Oh my gosh, what a demented party. Those are their issues? Okay, let's bring in an economist, EJ Antoni, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, the in-house economist of the Vince Coglianese Show. EJ, always good to have you, sir.
Vince, thank you for having me.
All right, so Joe Biden steps up to the microphone and once again says the economy's humming along, everything's great, inflation is down, unemployment is low. Assess, if you will, these statements this week by the president.
Well, they're more lies, essentially. I mean, it's the same thing over and over again with this president. And, and I hate saying that. I really don't like using that word about public figures, but there's just no other way around it, because it'd be one thing if this administration had a slew of data, let's say, from their own bureaucracy that somehow showed or portended to show that the American people were actually better off. But the opposite is the case. Literally, just yesterday, for example, we got a report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which breaks down personal income gains at a county level throughout the United States for the year 2022. And what it found was that in the bottom four quintiles, in other words, 80% of the country going by county, you saw that incomes did not keep up with inflation in 80% of the counties. Now, I understand that some counties obviously have a lot more people than others, but if you look at the map, it really is very mixed in terms of which areas of the country saw their incomes grow faster than inflation. In other words, it's not as if all the rural areas are in one camp or all the urban areas are in another camp. So it's pretty safe to say that for the vast majority of Americans, their wages have not kept up with inflation. I mean, there's a reason why the polls consistently show that people disapprove of how Biden is handling the economy.
Right. So you say their wages haven't kept up with inflations, but even that is a bit of a generous assessment. Their wages, their ability to spend money has plummeted, right? I mean, people have effectively lost income under Biden. How much have they lost?
No, that's exactly right. And so if you look at how much people have lost in terms of what we call purchasing power, which basically just means not so much how big is your paycheck, but how much stuff can your paycheck actually buy. And people have lost over $5,000. It's about $5,300 on an annual basis. In other words, take your annual salary today, compare it to January of 2021, and it's as if someone knocked $5,300 off of your paycheck. But on top of that, you also have much higher interest rates today. So that has made borrowing much more expensive for consumers on everything. It doesn't matter if you're buying a house or if you just have some credit card debt, an auto loan, student loans, whatever the case may be. That's about another $2,000 a year in higher financing costs. So you put just those two effects together, and it's as if the typical American family has lost $7,300 in their annual pay. And you're confused as to why people disapprove of your handling of the economy?
So what's fascinating is you are citing from the government data on this subject. They collect this data, they make it publicly available. Economists like you sort through it, and they can come up with assessments of what's actually going on. The White House, as you put it, is lying about what the data actually show. They're saying everything is great. These are all positive indicators. The trends are all headed in the right direction. Americans are doing well, but Americans don't recognize it. See, this is the thing they keep saying. Americans there's a disconnect between how well they're actually doing and their lack of realization about that fact. And the craziest part of this is, to me, EJ Antoni, is that you don't need a government report on this subject. Like, Americans, the reason they feel badly about their economic situation is because they have access to the easiest data in the world on that subject. They can see the prices. They can see their bank accounts. Am I right?
Exactly. So, Vince, I liken it to football commentators early in the NFL season where they start talking about a team. We saw this with the New York Giants, for example. There were some commentators who laughably said, oh, in the first couple of weeks or 3 weeks, this team is better than its record. And I understand that in certain cases, sometimes that is true. You might have a fluke game where you have some players out with injuries, you have some refs that blow calls that ruin the game.
Right.
Whatever the case may be, you can certainly have times earlier in the year when a team might be better or worse than its record, quote unquote. But when you're halfway through the season, I'm sorry, your record is your record. At some point, you have to own it. At some point, you can't blame every single game on a fluke. And right now, the president can't blame every single poll on a fluke. And for them to go up to the microphone and to say that wages are now rising faster than inflation, that's an out-and-out lie. We just had 4 months in a row where the monthly change in weekly earnings was less than the monthly increase in prices. And even if you don't look at it on a monthly basis, look at it on an annual basis, October was negative there too.
So go back to your sports analogy. Normally when people say, oh, they lost a game, but it's, that's okay. That they lost, but the fundamentals are what's important. And they've got it. They've got all the building blocks. This is a team that can win. If you're looking at the fundamentals, the underlying elements of our economy, what are you seeing right now? Are we heading, at least in the fundamentals, in a promising direction, or are there problems? Are you seeing rot there as well?
No, I see a lot of problems in the economic fundamentals here. When you start really digging into the macro level data, Vince, you find a lot of very troubling trends. You see, for example, with consumer spending, which is somewhere around 2/3 or maybe 70% of our economy, depending on the particular quarter. What you see there is it's almost like with the stock market where the Magnificent Seven are keeping all the rest of these indices up, whereas the vast majority of stocks are actually not doing all that well right now. With consumer spending, you have the upper income earners who continue to dig into what's left of their pandemic era savings, and they also have salaries that have by and large kept up with inflation. So they are spending like crazy, but for a lot of other people, their spending has actually already started to go down. And so we expect that to continue spreading throughout the economy from the lower income stratas to the middle class and so on. And also what you're seeing right now with consumer spending at those lower income levels has been fueled largely by debt. So people ran out of savings. They racked up over $1 trillion in credit card debt now is what we have nationwide. And that only works so long as you can continue to have access to credit. But at some point, banks start cutting people off because of the default risk. And then also individuals have a hard time getting additional credit. In other words, they max out their credit card. And because of these higher interest rates and tighter monetary conditions, the banks aren't going to give you another card or give you a limit increase. And that's when you're going to start seeing spending really peel back.
Okay, so let's talk about the monetary policy then. So at its core, I'm a simple guy when it comes to the economy. I like to understand these things as simply as possible. But as I understand it, with inflation, it's just about how much currency is out there floating around the market. If there's a lot, then things are a lot more expensive. If there's a little, then your dollar's going to go a lot further. Do I have that basic fact right?
Right, exactly. Your money is used to buy stuff. And so when the relationship between the amount of money and the amount of stuff to be bought, when that relationship gets too out of whack, you can expect prices to follow. And that's exactly what we've seen. This huge flood of money meant the value of the dollar had to go down.
So is the Fed at this point, I would assume the goal is to vacuum as much currency out of the market as they can in order to get rid of all of this inflation, meaning like the money that I have right now will be more valuable if the Fed succeeds. Are they vacuuming money out of the market?
They are, billions of dollars a month, tens of billions of dollars a month, actually. But here's the kicker. They also have not just billions, but trillions of dollars that they have basically sterilized. In other words, this was money they created for the government to spend. But in order to keep it out of the economy so the money could not multiply in the banking system and cause a lot of inflation, they have paid different financial institutions to essentially keep that money locked away on the sidelines. And they are spending $700 million daily in interest to keep $4.7 trillion worth of cash sterilized. The problem is, as the Treasury continues borrowing at this breakneck pace, where is that money coming from? Well, these financial institutions are saying, hey, instead of parking our cash at the Fed for this 5% interest rate, we can get a slightly higher interest rate by giving our money to the Treasury, loaning it to them. And so that's what they're doing. But as they pull the money out of the lock box at the Fed and give it to the Treasury, that money is now being spent. It's working its way through the economy. It's working its way into the banking system, and it's going to multiply, which means it's inflationary.
So to make sure, again, simple guy, trying to simply understand the economy here. The Fed is paying banks not to loan money, but in order to do that, they have to print money to pay the banks?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, exactly right. And,
crazy.
The really crazy thing here is this has gone to such an extreme that they have lost money. The people with the money printer somehow figured out a way to lose money, so much so that they have to date lost $120 billion with a B dollars.
That's what happens when you print too much money. You start to lose track of it. That always happens. I know that problem well. Hey, EJ Antoni, thank you as always for running through all of this with us and convincing us that no, we're not crazy. Joe Biden's just lying to you. Thank you very much, EJ Antoni with the Heritage Foundation. Good to talk to you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was fast. Speaker Mike Johnson has actually posted a link to a U.S. House of Representatives website now where they appear to be uploading, I don't know if it's all, but it's definitely a lot of footage from the United States Capitol building, again, from January 6th of 2021. A lot of people already beginning to click through all of this. I'm among them. I just was clicking through a moment ago, and it's a lot of footage of, get ready for this, people walking around hallways. It's shocking. Oh, I don't know how to handle this. Yeah, no, it is. It's just a lot of kind of boring footage of people walking around hallways. That's honestly what most of it is. Interesting, though. So Mike Johnson announces he's releasing it. They and unlike other Washington announcements where they make an announcement and they don't actually do anything, he announced it and then they actually released the footage. It happened within seconds. That's the most unusual thing I've ever seen. And that's great. They got the footage out there. Now let's explore the motivations. One, obviously, this is something that people have been asking for a while. Release the footage, please. They are using this, meaning the left is using this day and this event as a source of their power. That's what it is. They generate power from it. Nobody loves January 6th more than Nancy Pelosi. Nobody. Nancy Pelosi, who refused to protect the Capitol, National Guard, all that stuff. And then made a huge theatrical deal out of it by surrounding the Capitol with fencing after those events. We got to be protected. We're members of Congress. And the deep resentment for the American people that's all built into that. That's all Nancy, but she loves all of this. And so this has been a source of their power. And to the extent that we can mitigate that and get rid of anything that gives the left more power over our lives, I'm all for it. And so people have been for this for a while. Get the footage out there. They were asking Kevin McCarthy for that. There's been a number of people that the leadership was like, oh, certain journalists can look. We tried that. It didn't work. It just wasn't enough. And so now Speaker Johnson's fulfilling the desire to see this footage out there. Now, other piece of this, motivation. Mike Johnson's locked into a big spending battle ahead. He just got a bit of a can kick. He got some opposition from some of the conservatives. 93 Republicans voted against it in the House. And they said, we're not for this. We can't sustain this out of control spending. You've got to get this stuff under control. They haven't threatened to throw him out just yet, but it's looming. The concern about where all of this is headed. And so now they're breaking for Thanksgiving. This is Friday. Next week's Thanksgiving week. They're breaking for Thanksgiving. And the last thing that Speaker Johnson wants is a couple of weeks of people absolutely stewing about what a crappy job he's doing as Speaker of the House. So this kind of lets the air out of that ever so slightly. A little bit of a red meat toss. Woo. Check it out. I just released all this footage. Great. But it's a sign, by the way, that pressure works. Stay on these guys. get what you want out of them. Get them to do the people's business. Speaker Mike Johnson seems like a perfectly decent Christian human being. But like all of us, he's fallible. And he's in a position of tremendous power right now. And he should use it for our good. And we should remind him to do that with some frequency. So there you go. You got these videos out. He wants your approval. If you want to give it to him, feel free. But in the meantime, he's got a lot of work ahead of him. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Luke Rosiak. He's going to talk about his latest reporting on the FBI. And also Bob Anderson is joining us just moments away. He just unseated Buddha Beberai, and that's great for America.